Hey, so today we're going to be talking about a really interesting subject I just saw. Asmongold TV is reacting to a new race war just started. Let's hear what he has to say on the subject, and I'll let you know my opinions as we go.
Race wars. Oh boy. Who's excited for the race wars, guys? Who's ready? This is a great video.
Hostility between races is exploding online right now.
It is. Hell up that baby. Make that baby brainless or something for a while. That's what happens when you grow up with racist parents.
So you're an unashamed racist.
Correct.
Everyone's tired, everyone's overwhelmed, and we're all exhausted from watching the world fall apart, and most of us don't know what to do with the tension anymore. Without any real solutions, the chaos hasn't just continued, it's gotten louder and uglier.
Shit.
Is she just spamming it?
You hard ER today and get $1 million tomorrow. And it'll all get swept under the rug because they all still have their teeth.
We've come to realize that we're all about to wake up in a very different world soon, and this moment right now marks the tipping point.
No,
So
we
what's
woke
really
up in a very different world already, right? It's already at that tipping point.
going on underneath all of this outrage? And more importantly, before it's too late,
Have you
how can
guys
Christians
seen like the tensions that are going on online right now on social media sites? The hatred and the call to violence is being used on platforms like X. People have lost their minds.
step into the chaos without becoming part of the problem?
Yeah.
To understand what's really happening, we have to look at the two events that everyone's reacting to and why they've become a tipping point for so many Americans. A few weeks ago, you probably heard the story about a kid named Austin Metcalf who was fatally stabbed at a track meet by another teen named Carmelo Anthony. And despite
Sad
Austin's dad
case.
saying that this wasn't about race and begged for people not to turn this into a
And his dad tried so hard not to make this about race. His dad tried so hard to be respectful. I think that if it was me, I would have been way angrier, right?
race war, that's exactly what
It probably wasn't. Realistically, their conflict was probably just Carmelo being an asshole. Because Carmelo got in other problems at school too. I think Carmelo was just a retard asshole. Like, that was it. Like, it didn't have anything to do with
The only thing I have to say about that is obviously he had to have been a retard in the first place to have brought a weapon onto school property and deliberately sat in the wrong place to cause and bring trouble to himself. He was looking for a fight, right? Or else why would he have a knife?
race.
the internet did.
I just have one thing to say on behalf of the black community. We don't care. We don't care, okay? The same way you don't care about Trayvon Martin, yeah. And I'll say that with my whole heart. We don't care.
Anti-white race hatred is
I think that's also a really good point too, is that the way that Trayvon Martin was portrayed and George Zimmerman was portrayed, I think the media has done a very good job at creating the highest degree of like racial separation that we've ever had.
so profound that a black
You can believe that one case is bad and then see an injustice on the other side and still feel remorse for an innocent victim. You don't have to face one problem and answer that problem with the same injustice that you feel was shown to you. It doesn't fix anything if you just take it further, right? You can have empathy for injustice, and you can show that empathy to whoever that injustice is happening to. It doesn't have to be about race.
black student can stab an unarmed white teenager.
But this was only the start. Things got much worse as soon as this happened. Carmelo's family set up a fundraiser, which quickly raised nearly $600,000, which left people
That should have
online
never
split
happened.
and enraged. Those who defended
That kid
him
did
making the
not
money
need money.
claimed that the stabbing could have been a self-defense and that the money was
No.
raised so that Carmelo could have a fair
Self-defense
trial.
at school with other adults around, lots of other kids around. They were not in a secluded area. This wasn't gang activity. They were at a track meet.
But those who are opposed to him raising money claim that the money was
Self-defense,
raised
my
as a way of
ass.
celebrating a crime against the white kid and essentially condoning murder. So
Well, the
after
problem with that was like a lot of the comments were about Carmelo Anthony being targeted and arrested because he was black. I think that was really the issue that people had with it, is that there was a degree of almost like just categorical hand waving of Carmelo Anthony's behavior because he was black. And you could see that in the comments.
Yeah, and that's because the culture in black communities, and you hear this with a lot of black people defending Carmelo Anthony's actions, that you fuck around, you find out, right? So anyone who messes with a black person on the street would face the same. You hear this a lot, and that's the problem, right? It's the black culture, which isn't all black people. I'm not trying to categorize it, but it is predominantly, it's this ghetto culture. All people of all races that come from these ghetto areas have the same culture, and it's violent, right? And that is the problem.
Of the donations. And I think that's what really radicalized people about it. And then also the other big issue with it was that the guy that effectively attached himself to the Carmelo Anthony case had a rap sheet that would have gotten him 5 stars in Grand Theft Auto.
Oh, yeah.
This guy shouldn't even be out of jail.
Yeah, he was a piece of work.
Like, he beat up a toddler. He had, like, Grand Theft Auto charges, multiple theft charges. Like, this guy was a...
But because they shined that turd and put him in a suit, all of a sudden he was, like, a professional, upstanding defender. No, this guy had no business being on a soapbox.
Complete piece of shit, right?
Yeah.
And, like, he was basically leading the charge in advocacy of Carmelo Anthony, right? And I think that's what really also radicalized people as well.
His tensions were already super high.
It's a double
they
standard,
got even
right?
worse after this happened. Just last week, a video went viral showing a white woman named Shiloh Kendricks at a park in Minnesota allegedly calling a 5-year-old black autistic child the N-word. And when asked why she said it, she defended her words.
Yep. The child? Did you call the child the word? It is my own business. You call him a Okay, why don't you...
Okay, so I have a couple of things to say about this particular case. As a whole, she was wrong. She shouldn't have called anybody a slur, right? So from what I understand, this 5-year-old black boy, autistic black boy, stole something out of her diaper bag, and when she found him playing with said object, she then took it back and called him the slur word. That's what I've heard. Well, for one, why was a little boy of only 5 years old who has mental disorders playing at a park unsupervised by his mother or father? Okay, that's number one. He had no business there by himself. Second of all, why have his parents not instilled in him, right, the proper procedures when you're around other people? You don't take things from other people. And if he's not mentally able yet to adhere to the standards that should be taught to all people in society because of his age or because of his mental disability, he has no business being alone, right, in society. Two, I actually wanted to show you guys a little bit here. The man who is taking this video, Sharmak Omar, he is actually a sex offender who was hanging out in a park. He did not have kids in that park. He was hanging out, scoping out the other kids in the park. Let's see if I can find it here. He allegedly... yeah, he was accused of raping a 16-year-old, right? Let's see. Yeah, he was with another man. Let me see if I can find it here. Mohammed Hussein Amr and Sharbak Bail Omar. And Omar was the one taking the video at the park. And he was with this other guy in this sex offender case. They both attacked, or one of them, I'm not sure exactly what the details are of that, but anyways, so yeah, he had no business in a park alone. Why? That's kind of sus, right? Yeah, just want to make that known, okay? So there are no real innocent parties here. Two wrongs don't make a right, of course. She should not have said what she said. But I think that in America right now, tensions are running high, right?
I never even watched this video.
Okay. All right, that's what you say. A little kid, you call him a The little child?
But that's not even where things went crazy. This was the start of the tipping point.
Mm-hmm.
Hendricks
Yep.
launched a crowdfunding campaign, doubling down on her statement and
Yep.
claimed that she and her family were facing threats and needed help relocating. And the fundraiser skyrocketed, raising over $700,000 in just days, surpassing the amount that was raised for Carmelo Anthony.
Yeah, this would have never happened if the Carmelo Anthony GoFundMe didn't happen.
Yeah.
Like, this would have never even existed.
And I hate to break it to her, but she's going to be recognized anywhere that she moves. She's not going to be able to relocate anywhere quietly. She has done this, and she has to kind of lay in the bed that she has made. I think that's her own punishment, correct? So I think moving really is a moot point.
Existed, it would have never happened. This was a direct response.
Reporters say that the fundraiser isn't about what she said, but about pushing back on cancel culture, defending free speech, and in defiance of the white guilt narrative.
Yeah.
While those who are opposed to her raising money are claiming that the reason why she got so much support is because she's racist, and that this is essentially about people wanting to condone racism. And ever since all of this,
Both sides are right. That's the truth. Both sides of this are right.
digital race war has exploded on platforms like X, with so many people saying absolutely horrific
Yeah.
things about the
Yeah,
other race.
I agree. There are a lot of racist people on both sides. You can see that with the way that people are talking about this, just the rhetoric that's flying on social media right now. It's very obvious that there are a lot of people on both sides that are very, very racially charged right now.
Race. And this isn't just one or two people saying things like this. Literally thousands of people have been openly calling for violence or hatred, or retweeting statements of
Segregation.
violence and
Yeah.
hatred towards the
I think for too long, rather than nipping the racism in the bud and moving past all of that and trying to be equal participators in society, which we essentially have gotten to a place in America where we can all live equally together. We have chosen, news outlets have chosen to place a spotlight on an unexistent inequality that they want to show and perceive to people that exists, that does not exist. In fact, does not exist. And it's caused a lot of tension, and it's caused a lot of anger, and it's caused a lot of resentment in the black community toward the white people. And there's been a lot of racism with all races toward white people in recent years, where a lot of people are saying, you know, we can't be racist toward white people because that is the opposite of the definition of racism, which is just obviously ridiculous. That's crazy. Of course you can be racist against any race. That's insane. So all of this has been happening for quite some time, and white people have just been quietly sitting back and listening to all of this and trying to be respectful. In fact, a lot of white people out of guilt have joined into all this craziness and apologized for things that they should not have been apologizing for. So it has gone on, and it has inflated to the point where a lot of white people now are becoming very angry and lashing out because they no longer want to sit back quietly and listen to this because they're being unfairly treated. So I think a lot of racism wouldn't even exist right now if the racism that was spurring up at a time, right, any time that it spurs up, was just nipped in the bud and stopped right there, instead of being spurred on and inflated by individuals in the media and others, right?
The other race, as calls for segregation keep continuing to stack up more and more each day. But the more that this race battle continues to evolve,
I think the reason why this started to happen is actually because of BLM and the riots in 2020.
That's part of
And
it.
the fact that the government didn't immediately shut them down.
Exactly.
And I think that because of that, it gave people the
That's part of it.
mindset that because it was like a BLM riot and it was a racially coded like thing, that it was okay for these people to behave this way.
There were a
and
lot
it
of
radicalized a lot of
there were a
people.
lot of
and
little
it's kind of like, remember what I was
instances
saying earlier
like
today
that.
about how like the big problem in I think Europe, and not all of Europe, but the countries that are having these issues like France and the UK, with like these Muslim migrant gangs, is not that they're happening, it's that the government turns a blind eye to it and they don't enforce the law in a unilateral way. And I think this is the exact same problem that happened in the US with BLM, is that if the BLM riots had happened and immediately they were shut down by the National Guard or some other variation of that, I don't think that we would have seen this type of escalation that would have happened.
That's very
But
true.
the problem is that you could see these riots happening and everybody could watch it happening, where they're burning down businesses that have nothing to do with this. They're, like stealing from stores. And also, like, when I say they, I'm not talking about black people, because there are tons of white people that were participating in this as well.
Right.
And Latino people and everybody, right? This wasn't it wasn't even really a race war. It was just all of these people getting together and doing this. But they were.
I want to be very clear. There are good and bad people on every single side. Obviously, right? That doesn't even need to be said, but I just want to make that clear in case anyone tries to misconstrue my words. All white people aren't good. All black people are not bad. All white people are not bad. All black people are not good. There are good and bad people of every single color and every single race. So you cannot judge based on the color of someone's skin, right? And one of the main proponents for this racial discrimination that's happening is actually DEI, right? You cannot give somebody a position or say that somebody deserves something based on the color of their skin. That in itself is racism.
We're doing it for this cause, and the cause was, of course, attached to a race, which was obviously black people, right? And so this happens, and then you have everybody freaking out and getting really mad about it, because they see the obvious injustice of, houses being destroyed, businesses being burned down, cars getting, looted, stores being completely stolen, everything stolen out of the store, and nothing happened. And the people that were calling it out were almost being portrayed as racist. And I think that radicalized people more than any KKK rally ever could. And I think it did so to a magnitude of like 10,000 times more. And I think that almost all of the race problems that we have, I think they date back to like two different points. I think that woman saying the Trayvon Martin case, I think that was one really big point. And I think the second point was BLM. It was the selective reporting and the biased reporting of interracial violence between, white and black people in the 2010s. And then the crescendo of that, the climax of that, was those riots in 2010.
Those are all proponents.
And
yes.
now you're seeing
That's
a
all
huge
part of it.
like reactions to OJ verdict. The fact is, I'm 34. I don't remember that very well.
There are
you
so
could be
many
right,
things,
but this
all the way back to OJ, right? Even before that, and all kinds of things that are going on even today, and in the last few years. There's so many little instances. Like, you could just go on and on with all the little things that have happened that have led up to this point. But yeah, BLM, Trayvon Martin, a lot of things could be named as, catalysts, right? But there are so many little things that have happened.
This is my frame of reference based off of like my lifespan.
And it's all tit for tat,
About the
right?
injustice the black people still
And it's
suffer
just
to
adding
this
on
day.
top
Do
of
people
each
not see
other.
that part? Well, like, which injustice do you mean, right? So, like, are you talking about, like, for example, like, I don't know, like, I think that if you're talking about, like, any sort of, like, structural, like, injustice that a black person is dealing with, because, and here's the thing, right, and this is very important to keep in mind, is that I do think that there are elements of racism that are prevalent, and I do think that sometimes, black people do get treated worse by police by the nature of the color of their skin. I think this happens. I think it does happen. But the problem is that there are so many bad actors that are on both sides that are trying to pretend like it always happens, and there's other people trying to pretend like it never happens. And so you have two sides of people that are intentionally dishonest, that are misrepresenting a legitimate problem, and it makes everybody worse. It makes everything worse. And so that's really it. Only inherited wealth. Well, I mean, like, the thing is that I think that black people are at a number of, like, kind of cultural disadvantages. I think that generational wealth is probably the best example that I can use of it. That's the most material that I can make an argument for. But it's very hard to have honest conversations about these things because the conversations are dominated by dishonest people.
But and both things are true there. When you say that black people most of the time don't have generational wealth, that's not completely true anymore. There are some black people that do have generational wealth that they're born into. Um, but I would have to say on the other side, there are many, many, many white people and other races that are not coming from generational wealth either. And generational wealth in itself is not the only telling factor of whether or not you are going to be successful in life or not, right? How hard you work, right? How crafty you are, how skilled you are, how you use yourself going through this life, and the opportunities that are presented to all people who show up for those opportunities, right? There are some opportunities that are only afforded to richer people, that's true. But there are the same opportunities that are presented to all people that you just have to reach out for if you really set your mind to it and work toward that goal, right? Anyone can enroll in school. Anyone can take out student loans. Anyone can work a job while they're going to school and find a way to pay for it. Lots of people go through training programs and schooling and don't have any money when they start. They just do. You can study if you don't go to a very good school. You can use the library's computers, and you can watch YouTube videos and tutorials and read up on a subject that you're interested in. You can rent books out and read things. There is a way to get to where you want to be in life if you work at it, right? And you're not automatically separated from the things that you want in life because you weren't born into generational wealth. I sure wasn't, right? And I went through a period of my life where I was going through a period of my life where I lost everything at one point. I ended up in one of these ghetto areas where there were a lot of people, not just black, but white and black and brown and everything in between. And the culture in those areas is violent, dangerous, and they don't give a fuck about anything, right? A lot of the people that live in those neighborhoods have lived there their entire life. It's the example set by their parents who have been in and out of jails all of their lives. And they hate police officers. They don't want to go to work. They just do drugs. They have 12 baby mamas. Like, it's an insane, out of control situation, right? And it's cultural. It is learned behavior, unfortunately, in those neighborhoods that we somehow need to figure out how we are going to educate and provide some form of support for the people who are in those situations who want to get out of them, because I can guarantee you a lot of them don't want to get out of it. They like where they're at, right? And so for the ones who are living like degenerates in these areas and who don't have any aspirations to get out, they should be punished, sent to jail.
And I find it to be very disappointing. Where's my generational wealth? I mean, most people don't have generational wealth. But on average, don't you think slavery and segregation would have made it a lot harder for black families to have generational wealth? Like, can't both things be true? Why can't you just acknowledge this obvious reality?
Okay, because I don't think that that pertains to now. Just like he was born, Asmund Gold was born into poverty. His parents were not slaves, yet he was still born into poverty. All black people did not come from parents of slaves, or parents who were slaves, grandparents who were slaves. They didn't all come from that. The ones who did come from that, they're removed from that, right? The generations that came before them were able to do something with their lives besides slavery, right? So by the time we get to any young person today, they're far removed from anything like slavery, right? So they should not still be judged or given things based on something that happened generations ago.
Like, I mean, of course. Like, what are we talking about? Like, why? 100 years ago? Yeah, exactly. We don't care. It's not about whether you care or not. It's about whether it happened or not and whether it's real. acknowledging that something is real is always a good thing than denying the truth.
I don't think anyone's denying that it's the truth. I think that it's just using that as an excuse to explain why certain things are happening today isn't really fair, right? You can't say that all of these people have no chance when all the chances that are presented to everyone else is presented to them. Whether or not they get up and take it is not anyone's fault but their own, right? And if you're talking about, because culturally, like I said earlier, it's kind of passed down, this ghetto attitude of not working and not responsible, and you know, that does go on, but that's a different conversation, right? Giving these people who live that kind of lifestyle a lot of money is not going to solve anything. They're just going to buy drugs with it. They're going to commit crimes with it. They're going to be irresponsible with it. They're not going to invest in stocks or buy a really nice house in a nice neighborhood. They're just going to be bigger degenerates until the money runs out, right? So an education of some kind or counseling needs to be presented. Maybe, you know, a state-run training program that can help these people. I do know from living in these neighborhoods that there was, where I lived, a one-stop program, which was basically a state-run program where you can go in if you don't have a job, you don't have money, you don't have food. They'll give you food stamps, they'll get you a temp job, they will give you counseling to try to keep that job and job training. There was a program where you could go in, they will give you an outfit, teach you how to do an interview, all of those things, right? And those are all important skills. But a lot of these people, and I know this from experience because my neighbor across the street used to talk to me quite a bit, and I tried to help her quite a bit, learning, you know, credit and how to kind of like, you know, work the system. But she had zero knowledge of credit cards, or she had no idea about work ethic and why that was important. And she was living with a boyfriend who also sat all day and could not keep a job. And they had no interest, right? The programs existed and they had no interest in doing any of these things. They didn't see the importance in it because they had no examples, right? And in their own lives. And so there has to be some kind of like extra training and follow-up for those who want it, and it needs to be provided. And then those who show up just for the food stamps and then sit at home and collect money while they don't work, which all of those people who I'm talking about in these examples, they did that, right? All they wanted was the unemployment. They just tried to work the system in a way where they had to work the least amount and got the most amount of assistance from the state. And they also had as many kids as they could have so that they could collect money for those kids in the form of food stamps and Social Security monthly allowance for each child. So basically, we need to stop helping those who do not contribute to society and do not put in any effort. Those who say they're hungry and they have kids who are hungry, instead of feeling sorry for them and just giving them things, that's not what they need, right? If they're unable to take care of their kids, they need to get into some kind of help program to learn how to take care of themselves and their kids. And if they're unwilling to do that, the kids should be removed from the home, in my opinion, and they should not be given food stamps, right? It's either they get up and earn it themselves, or it shouldn't just be handed to them.
Take the L, bro. That's not the point. It's not an L. This is a fact. It's just an objective fact. And I can give other examples of this too. Like, I can give examples about how people who aren't in English-speaking countries that come here and they didn't have access to education, this is just the truth. And I'm not saying that like I'm not like the problem why people get so defensive about this is because, you know, like I say something like this and they're like, oh, okay, so you just want reparations. No, I never even said that. Nobody's saying that. Nobody's saying this. Nobody's trying to push for that at all. I think that it's
I think we're gonna
important to
skip
accurately
forward.
understand where things are and to understand how it
Everyone
was
claims
obvious.
systemic oppression against their group. And by the way, I'm sure both sides would be more than eager to explain why their claims are legit and the other side's isn't, but to say that would be to miss my point. Because my point is this. What I've come to realize is that it's easier to recognize genuine problems or even misdiagnosed problems when we're on the receiving end of it. Of course, there's exceptions,
Yeah.
but our personal experiences in history shape how we view the world and what we notice. And if we're not the target, we easily miss those subtle things that others might see every day. This is why most non-Christians don't see prejudice against Christians, even though a lot of us believe that we see it. It's why
I think that there is prejudice against Christians, and I think that it's obvious that in media, it's much more socially acceptable to make fun of Christianity and to demonize and delegitimize and degrade Christianity in comparison to other religions.
Well, in
It's
America,
obvious.
that's true.
If you can't see that, you're just being dishonest.
In America, that's true because, right, the America, like, you know, the Pledge of Allegiance has "In God We Trust" in the pledge. It was founded on Christianity, America was, and it's in vogue right now to mock it, make fun of it, turn away from it, right? Which I think is detrimental. When Christianity is done right, not extreme, but done right, it is an absolute plus for society.
Jewish people on the left, like Ethan Klein and David Pakman, were quick to call out what they perceived as anti-Semitism, while the rest of their non-Jewish group dismissed it as non-existent. It's why women on the right have called out what they see as misogyny coming from those like Andrew Tate. Now, the point is not whether or not these people are right, but how people within certain groups may be sensitive to what they perceive as attacks coming from the outside while dismissing it when others claim the same thing.
Exactly.
It's happening all across the board, and it's filling a dangerous pattern where everybody's experiences feel invalidated, which makes everything worse.
Yep.
The end result of both sides feeling ignored is that we're locked in a cycle of retaliation.
So, but just to be clear, you just said to me you use the N-word regularly. In what context? Do you use it with black people?
Yes, if it's appropriate.
When would it be appropriate?
Anytime I feel like it.
So you're an unashamed racist.
Savor the sweeter things in life with Culver's new concrete mixers and lemon ice coolers made with fruity Skittles popped.
I chose Wix for my business because of its massive scope for functionality and freedom.
Correct.
Every reaction becomes fuel for the next.
I think that the focus around using the N-word is like a really big misdirection. And it's like a word, like obviously, like, I mean, it's not a polite thing to do to call somebody the N-word, right? Obviously, it's bad to do that. But at the same time, the real issues are not the N-word. The real issues are making sure that people can afford food, they have access to education. Like, these are the real problems.
Like I said, access to education is important. Life skills, teaching people life skills when their parents and their families have not done so. Changing the embedded culture that is creating people, problematic people for society, is important. But handing out food and money to people like this, like I said, it's just enabling the behavior, right? Because they just have more and more kids in order to get more and more money, and they don't work, and they collect unemployment and food stamps, and they're living off of taxpayer money, basically. So handing them the money with nothing on their part to show for it is not helpful. Now, if they were given the money, but then they were also expected to show something like job training programs, they have to show that they're enrolled in them and completing them. They have to show that they are actually working. They have to show that they are not getting fired, that they have been respectful, and they have, used the skills that they're being taught in these programs. Then they should be allowed to keep their food stamps. But as soon as, they stop trying because it's too difficult, the money should be stopped as well until they get hungry enough, right, to get back up and get back into these programs and actually do something. Like, they should need to work and show progress for what they get.
Problems, and that they're being treated fairly by the justice system. Like, these are the real issues. Like, the N-word is not, this is like a bullshit retard issue. It's like, it's like the Hail Hitler song. Like, this is a retard issue. Access to jobs? Yeah. Like, for example, right? And so let's look at, like, and I'll give you an example, right? And so there's like a much poorer area, and let's say it's dominated primarily by minorities, maybe not just black people, but just in general minorities. Well, these poorer areas generally have less stores in them because these stores get broken into a lot.
True.
And so a lot of upper middle class liberal white people like to get together and talk about how much all cops are bastards and how they want to defund the police. And they do defund the police, and it succeeds. And so the communities that are actually in the most dire need of the police now don't have the police.
Well, the people in these neighborhoods don't want the police to begin with. They hate the police. As a general rule, these people hate the police because they grew up their entire life being afraid of the police because the police came to take their parents away because their parents were drug dealing or something out of the back room, right? So they view the police as the villains. Defunding the police is not helpful in the slightest. Arresting the degenerates who are looting the businesses, that would be a really great start, right? Having surveillance and actually following up and, arresting those who are committing the crimes. But the facts are that these ghetto areas are far too big for the police to keep up with. There's so much going on, so much crime being committed simultaneously, and they're all covering for each other, hiding each other, not telling on each other, because their values are all the same, right? They don't want to follow the rules. They think the rules are not for them. So yeah, the problem is not the police in these cases, and I'm not saying all police are good, they're not, because I've also been a corrections officer, and I've seen that side of it too, and let me just say, there are a lot of police officers who are human and who are just as bad as the criminals, and unilaterally, all people, whether they're police officers, black, white, gray, brown, purple, need to be held to the standard of the law, the same standard of the same law.
And because the police are defunded, so are the businesses, because the businesses can't make their money back because they're getting their stuff destroyed and stolen. So then you have the good businesses that are moving out of these areas that are underprivileged, and because of that, you have people that are in these areas that are looking for local jobs that now don't have access to them because of the second order effect of defunding the police. And this is the way that these things happen. Usually there are not, and this is the problem with discussing a lot of these issues. Food deserts are like, that's one example, but there's many examples of this. Womp womp, stop stealing. I agree with you. I totally agree with you. But do you know how you stop people from stealing? Is that you bring in more police, you arrest the people that are stealing, and then
the people who are getting arrested for stealing in these ghetto neighborhoods, they're not learning anything when they see their friends and family being arrested by the police. It just creates a larger divide. The people who live at the ghetto hate the police more and hide from the police more, but continue committing the crimes. The culture doesn't go away. It just amplifies and continues off in the shadows. And the police, they're not getting anywhere because the crime is just rampant in these areas, because culturally, systematically, that's just the way it is, right? That's just the way they live. That's their reality, right? You hear all these rap songs about life on the streets. That's literally the way that they live day to day. How do you take the ghetto out of the ghetto? Like, I don't know, right? But that's the problem.
then everybody else is happy. Look at El Salvador. Like, no matter how bad you think anywhere in America is, it's nothing compared to El Salvador. And he just took care of it. Arrest the criminals and the problems go away. Wow, what a surprise.
If you went in like El Salvador and you just arrested all of the ghetto, right? Yeah, crime would stop, but some people who were innocent would get swept up in that too. And I'm not saying that, oh, you sacrifice, you know, the safety of all the other people because you're afraid of arresting a couple who are innocent, because that's an argument I've heard a lot say. You know, you don't want to sacrifice the safety of all by ignoring the crime. But I say that, yeah, arrest those who are committing the crimes, arrest those who are aiding and abetting those committing the crimes. Absolutely, like, indiscriminately, they should be arresting those people, but they should also implement some kind of program that gives people an out if they so choose to take it. If they enroll themselves and show that they are making progress and trying to change their lives around, they should be given the opportunity to do so. They shouldn't just be left to that, you know?
So, yes, Bozo Chat, it's bullshit. And it's not the people in El Salvador's fault. You can't blame the communities there. You can't blame them. These are gangs. These are people with guns. Like, they're going to attack your family. They're going to destroy your house. You need to hold the government accountable for not getting rid of these people. And so, and do you guys see how,
that's the way their
these
culture
again, virtue signaling,
though. Right?
like virtue signaling activist causes, like,
and it definitely needs to be dealt with when it progresses that way, right? But if you haven't tried to give these people a chance and get them out of their situation if they so choose to take the out, out of gang life, out of that neighborhood, if they don't choose to go in a different way, then I can understand arresting them and condemning them to imprisonment for the rest of their lives. But if they have already joined the gang and they have already committed crimes, then yes, they need to be punished for that. But there are a lot of individuals, young individuals, who are maybe they're just related to somebody, like an older brother who has been forced into that life or whatever, and for safety they feel as though they need to participate in some things, but maybe they're not like full-fledged, gang members or whatever. They should be offered an out, right?
Like, defunding the police actually hurt these minority groups and create economic disadvantages down the line through a chain of events. That's why it's happening. And these problems do exist and they are real. But you can't talk about them because most people that are discussing these topics can't understand anything other than a direct cause and effect. A minute ago, you meant the police is acting in bad faith towards black people. Now you say these communities need more cops? Yeah, you're right. And so the way you would solve that is you spend more time making sure the police are interacting with the communities. And also, I didn't say that it was I didn't say that it was or wasn't happening. I said that there is a degree of it's happening, that it's a gotcha. No, this is okay. That's fine. There is a degree of it that does happen, but the problem is that addressing it is impossible because you have two groups of people on both.
So, like I said, the people in these neighborhoods do not like the police, right? They don't trust them, and having programs that interact with the public more, the police interact with the public more, is not the answer, because these people do not want to interact with the police. And the ones who would come to events or see the police, let's say they had like a chili dinner or something at the firehouse where the police were there and the community was invited, right? The ones who hate the police, which is everyone pretty much, just wouldn't show up, right? They just wouldn't interact, and their minds would not be changed from a chili dinner. So yeah, and having the police talk at a school in the ghetto, which again I know from experience. I lived there for about 2 years, until I was able to, get myself out of it. Having the police speak at a school, right, where 99% of the students have a parent who is currently or formerly have been incarcerated by the police. They hate the police because it took mom or dad away. They don't want to hear the police talking about how to be a good person up on stage when they're just missing a parent, right? They still hate the police. So there needs to be, like I said, a program implemented to kind of help these people and teach them the skills needed for society. But the police should be kept separate, I feel like, from this. It should be a separate entity. So they don't feel alienated from that program. It should be presented to them for them, separate from the police. And the police are the authority that come in when the program has failed and arrest these people, right?
Both sides that are unwilling to gain any, unwilling to cede any
Because it just seems disingenuous.
And so whenever I'm talking
right?
about more police, you will have bad police officers. This is a guarantee. So the problem with bad police officers isn't the fact that they exist, it's the fact that they are allowed to continue to exist. So you would have to reform the police system, increase higher levels of accountability, make sure that these police unions don't effectively control the law, and that's what you do. So, like, no accountability? Well, you need accountability for the police. Because, and you do you see how all of these...
You need accountability, and I think a lot more accountability is coming with, chest cams. The fact that police officers always have, like, everything that they're doing recorded. So the accountability is good, right? As long as we're not seeing officers turning off their cameras or pretending that they malfunction, or their partner is turning a blind eye if they decide to do something wrong. Like, there has to be some kind of follow-up, with the precinct if there is ongoing issues, complaints about an officer who just happens to have missing video cam footage of a situation, or like, there actually needs to be some kind of discipline in a lot of these situations so that a lot of this bad behavior can get stomped out.
These things fit together. You don't solve this problem by just giving black people more money.
Right.
You don't solve this problem by just putting more police officers in a ghetto area. You have to solve it with like 7 different things.
Right. It's a huge problem for sure. But I'm going to stop this video here. I will do a part 2 and we'll finish this video out, but this is already getting kind of long. I think this is a really good place to stop this video. Let me know what you think in the comments about this issue. Are you on one side or the other? What do you think the solutions to these problems would be? Like I said, they're vast, and the solutions, there's going to be numerous solutions to this problem too. It's not going to be an overnight fix, but yeah, let me know in the comments, and like and subscribe if you've made it this far, and I will see you guys in part 2. Bye.